Ruben Swartz, your host and chief nerd. Welcome to Sales for Nerds, the podcast for people who love using their expertise to serve clients but maybe aren't quite so enthusiastic about the sales and marketing aspects of the business. I struggled with this for years, ironically, as a sales and marketing consultant to the Fortune 500. Over time, I realized that there was a more effective, more authentic way to get clients by helping instead of selling, teaching instead of marketing, and connecting instead of networking. My mission is to help you learn the easy way instead of the way I learned it, by sharing my stories, by bringing on awesome guests to share their stories. And of course, as a software guy, I had to go and create the CRM I wished I'd had when I was struggling with more traditional systems. It does more of what us solo consultants need, help us nail our positioning, help us get more leads and conversations off our website, get more referrals, have more conversations, automates proposals all the way through to e-signature and more, and less of the bloat that comes with traditional CRMs. If you want to check it out, you can start a free trial at mimiran.com. That's MIMIRAN.com. And you can even just sign up for the free version, which helps you nail your positioning. And you can also find proposal templates, lead magnet ideas, and more. Once again, that's MIMIRAN.com. Now let's get to it. Today, I'm super excited to have with me Diane Helbig. She is the author of Succeed Without Selling. People looking on video, I've got the cover right here. The more you think about selling, the less you will sell. This sounds like something right up my alley, and I read it, and sure enough, it is, and I think it's going to be right up your alley as well. Diane and I have been trying to schedule this interview for months, and I don't know why, but for some reason it has taken forever. And we actually had this scheduled for a few days ago, and then Diane lost power. It was like one of those crazy signs. But here we are. Diane, welcome to Sales for Nerds. What do you have in your glass?
Oh, I have 19 Crimes Cali Red in my glass. What do you have?
Oh, very nice. I have this Chateau Boucasse Bordeaux, which is a Cab Franc, and 60% Tannat, which is some kind of grape that I'm not familiar with. And so I meant to look it up before the episode, and one thing led to another, and I didn't. So I'm going to have to look it up afterwards and put it in the show notes. But it tastes delicious.
Oh, good. Okay.
So Diane, all right. Cheers. Welcome. How did you get into sales? And I guess before we dive into your personal story, let me give people a little bit more background about you, because you've got all kinds of, the impressive accomplishments. You're a business leader, an advisor, you're an author, you're an award-winning speaker, you host your own podcast called Accelerate Your Business Growth. You're a member of the Newsweek Expert Forum. You're on the National Small Business Association Leadership Council, et cetera, et cetera. So all that cool stuff. Don't worry, this is like a top tier guest, people. But more importantly, what's your personal story? I'm guessing that you didn't grow up thinking, gosh, I'm going to write a book about how to sell without selling.
That is so true. As a matter of fact, I didn't grow up thinking I would be a salesperson either, right? My dad was a salesman. He was a very successful salesman. And so I grew up with that, being able to watch and pay attention to what he was doing. And then I'm trying to remember exactly when it was. It was in the 90s. I had moved to Cleveland, and I was the director of operations for a service firm. And I came to Cleveland to open an office. And after I was here for a little while, the owner said, Diane, you have to go into sales. And we argued for a year about it. I just so did not want to do it. And then he won, and I went into sales. I took the Dale Carnegie sales training course and sold for them for a couple of years, and then went to another company and sold product and a service. So it was a little bit of both for, I guess, a little bit more than 4 years there. So got a good mix.
Now, a lot of us grew up completely outside of sales and sort of had this general aversion to sales because we didn't even know what it was. You actually knew what it was, but you still had the aversion. Is that because you knew what it was?
And what's interesting is my father was everything that is good about selling, like that I write about in my book. Like, I learned so much good from him. I guess I just wasn't really connecting the dots. My vision of salespeople was the car salesman, the furniture salesman, all of those people who, you have that awful experience with, I
Yes.
didn't want to be that person.
Even though you had a very positive role model, you still
Yeah.
had the same mental associations that I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't
Now,
that something?
how did you break out of that?
Well, the Dale Carnegie course, I think, was a huge step for me because what I realized from that was that it wasn't that selling wasn't all those experiences that I had had, that I really was able to be myself, to be honest, to be a problem solver. And as long as I believed in what I was selling, I was okay.
I think that's right. And you mentioned in your book that because of the shifts in the way the economy works and where knowledge is and how easy it is to access, the game of sales, I think, rewards people who are themselves, who are honest, who are problem solvers much better than it did. And rather than thinking, oh, we're so disadvantaged because we're not the archetypal salesperson, I want people to come away thinking, no, this is actually the future of sales. People who
Yeah,
aren't that archetypal salesperson.
boy, that is so true. And I feel the same way. Like I feel like the things that you and I believe are liberating for people because they don't have to behave in that way that they know isn't right, that they know doesn't feel good. Great, don't do it.
Right. And it's fine if you're totally extroverted and you are, as long as you're ethical and honest, there's an extroverted sort of people first way of dealing with things, which is
Yeah.
totally fine. But
Mhm.
either way, you're going to get burned if you're Glengarry Glen Rossing people.
I can tell you how much I hate always be closing. Like, I talk about it in the book, but it puts people in this place where all they're thinking about then is selling. If you're always closing, then everyone is a prospect.
Right.
Well, it's not true, and it's gross. It's just that's salesy and all of those things that we don't like about and that we believe about salespeople.
Now, you talked a lot about mindset shifts, and it's funny because I was reading this book, and people who've been listening to the show for a while know that I promised episodes and episodes ago that I was going to write Sales for Nerds, the book, and I have made very little progress on that, let's just say. But I'm like, gosh, this comes awfully close to what I would have written. So
Good.
maybe I've lucked out. Maybe I can just say, hey, go buy a Diane's book. But I think, like you, so much of it starts with mindset shifting. And tell us a little bit about how you shifted your mindset and how you think other people can do that as well.
So thank you for that. I really do. And so let me say that I get it that mindset shift isn't easy, but it is totally necessary. So I think what we have to do is move our mindset from selling to looking at every situation as I have to meet quota, I have to sell, I have to pay my lease, I have to pay, payroll or braces, pick your thing. Um, we have to let that go. We have to stop thinking about it. And we really want to shift our mindset to just being open and curious, just like going on a discovery mission. Because the truth is that we don't know anything about the person we're talking to until we get to know them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But the sales mindset is, oh, they check all the boxes. They look, I have to convince them that what I sell is just so valuable to them that they will just want to buy. That's my job, is to persuade them. No, it isn't. Because you don't know if they need it or want it or can afford it, or if you even want to do business with them. So it's really, not thinking about selling and thinking about connecting your product or service to a situation, a problem.
That makes so much sense. And it's funny because when I started out, I'm an engineer. I started out consulting, realized I had to sell, read a bunch of books on sales, and I would have those things. Oh, they check all the boxes. Why is this so hard? Well, because I wasn't really listening. I was getting happy ears and checking the boxes that I wanted to check, but not the
Yeah.
boxes that they cared about. And the
Yeah.
funny thing was, as soon as I stopped worrying about that, like you said, it actually got so much easier. And it's like you say, the more you think about selling, the less you'll sell. And I think the converse, the less you think about selling, the more you'll sell.
So true. It's so true. And see, it felt better, right? It was
Felt
more
natural.
comfortable. It was more natural. Yeah. So you do it because it's just, you're just having a conversation with somebody. You're just having a meeting. You're learning about them. And then if it makes sense, they're learning about you and what you offer. But this whole, when you're in sales mode, you're nervous, you're anxious, what a lot of small business owners tell me is that they feel like they're on, like they have to really be persuasive.
Hmm.
And so there's all this anxiety around, oh my gosh, what do I say? How do I know what the right thing is to say? When I say to them, just don't even bother. Just ask a question and then stop and listen to the answer. Like, wow, really? That's what I get to do? Mm-hmm. That's that's
Well,
it.
it's like if you were talking to a friend and there was not going to be any money involved, you would ask them and you would understand their real issue and you would help them if it was appropriate, or you would send them somewhere else if that was appropriate, or
Right.
you'd say, don't worry about it if that was
Yeah.
appropriate. And you wouldn't be stressed out. You wouldn't have to be, as you say, on. You'd just
Yeah.
be natural. And I
Yeah.
think for a lot of people, there is that stress and there's that notion of, oh my gosh, because I'm nervous about sales and pipeline and I'm not doing a good job, I got to get this one because we do have to pay for braces or whatever it is,
Right.
versus I'm going to help people and I'm going to stand for something, and the right people are going to come to me and it will get easier. What do you know?
Amazing. And then you're working with the people who you want to be working with, right? Because you know what happens when you force it and you end up with customers that you hate. They're not a
Mhm.
big fan of you either, right? Like it's this terrible relationship that no one wants to be in. And while you're getting revenue, you're not necessarily profitable.
Right. And you're
So
you're hating it,
yeah,
and you're not going to get the referrals, and you're not going to get the follow-on work, and you're feeling miserable about your business. So if you do have any time for prospecting, it just doesn't feel good because you're not
right.
energized.
Right. Because you're thinking, oh, I'm going to get more of them. And you end up getting more of them, right? Because you're sort of telling the universe, ooh, this is who I work with. So you end up with these awful, terrible, clients and customers, and no one's fulfilled. And you spend an awful lot of time in where your focus is not where it should be. You're not doing work you love. You're not out prospecting. You're not bringing in really good clients. I mean, it really, it's a downward spiral from there, unfortunately.
Right. Now, something that I really like about this mindset shift is there's some mindset shifts like, oh, I'm going to go win an Olympic gold medal in swimming. My mindset shift has to be, I'm going to work out 10 hours a day or something really hard, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't have it in me to do that. Um, but this mindset shift is actually about, let's just take away all the stuff that's hard and actually make it easier. And so I'm not
Yeah.
trying to say that it's simple. It certainly took me years, and it's
Mhm.
still a work in progress, but we are out there discarding things that are barriers to our own success, that are barriers to our own authenticity, and making it easier,
Right.
right? We're not trying to be Olympians.
No, no. I'm so glad that you said that because it really is liberating. It really is. You get to, the sigh of relief when you realize that when you go to a networking event, your goal is to identify how people fit into your community or not,
Hmm.
right? You're not looking for customers. You're just getting to know people because you need those resources. You need that community around your business. You need those referral partners. So you're not going to get business at a networking event. And if you did, it wouldn't be business that you wanted. So relax, have a glass of wine, enjoy yourself,
Right.
right?
Be helpful to other people.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah.
So people are probably thinking, okay, great. I hate selling. I don't want to think about selling. This all sounds good. I'm just going to go ask a bunch of questions. But can we be a little bit more specific so that people can actually go, as soon as they stop listening to this, the next day they can actually start implementing what you're talking about?
Sure. Uh, so let me say this. So you're networking to build your community because the more people that are in your community who trust you and you trust, the more opportunities you're going to have to get warm introductions to your prospect. So cold calling, while you might have to do it, you're not going to have to do as much of it. There's nothing better than a warm introduction. So this is part of the reason why when your focus is over here on just building relationships, you figure out, who you trust, who trusts you, who does business like you do, values are the same, all of that. Then you got to build that target market and understand that everyone is not a target market. You're not going to do business with everyone, but there are very specific individuals or companies, depending on who you sell to, who fit parameters, right? And they usually fit the parameters of your best and favorite clients, the top 20%. Think about that, identify that, and then go looking for them. Do your research. Once again, discovery. Do your research, learn as much as you can about them. So then when you do outreach, you have something to talk to them about because you've learned about them, or you're going to ask someone for an introduction. And remember, you are looking for the meeting, not the sale. All you want to do is have a conversation with them. You want to learn more about them. Then when you're in the sales meeting, so let's say you have meetings you're going to go to, man, you got to ask a lot of questions before you talk. And you have to really listen to the answers, and you have to make sure you get answers to those questions, because it's everything you need to know about them and their situation and how they do business that's going to help you determine if you can help them and if you want to help them.
Okay. I have so many questions. So
Sorry, that was a lot of information.
No, it's great. But again, I want to drill down a little bit more, and I'm going to make a shameless plug here for my CRM, because it's the only one that I know of that actually asks you to work on your positioning and your ideal client right there in the CRM, because that's where a lot of my people get stuck. And so one of the things that I hear a lot is, well, I tell them some of the stuff that you just said, like, well, who are your favorite clients? What do you do for them? Call them, ask them, and whatever. A lot of them, because they've been kind of all over the place and they haven't defined a target market, they don't necessarily have, they're like, well, I really like this one over here and that one over there and this one, right? And they're loath to give up any of them. So do you have any advice for people stuck in that conundrum, just in case I know any?
Sure. So yes, you can have more than one target market. Absolutely. I'm going to suggest you work on one at a time, but sure, you could have, this lane over here, and then this lane over here, and that lane over there. Good, fabulous, rock on. Pick one to start with, because it helps you stay focused. It helps you with the conversations that you're going to have, with the stories you're going to tell, all of those. There's just a certain momentum that you build by going after one target audience. And then you get to a certain place where you feel like you've, saturated it sufficiently, then you can add the next one and then the next one.
What about folks who maybe feel like their ideal client, they haven't actually landed yet? They're still sort of working their way up. How do they work with that sort of aspirational target?
I think as long as they have an idea of what an ideal client would look like, and ask yourself these questions. How much do they value what you do for them? How much revenue are you realizing from them? And I'm saying this in the present tense, but you could say it in the future tense,
sure,
to yourself. What exactly are you selling them? Where are they located geographically? How big are they? How small are they? How many locations, whatever. Just ask yourself all these questions about aspirationally, this is who, man, if I was working with this, I'd be gold. I'd be loving every day. That'll give you an idea of then who you're going to prospect toward.
And then to get those meetings, you're going to get some from referrals. You're going to get some from your website. You're going to get some just from talking to people. You're going to do cold outreach if you need to. Anything else?
Yeah, so I love LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is a great opportunity to connect, build a community, and do prospecting research. So the one thing LinkedIn is not for is for you to go pitching your services to people you just connect with.
Will you please tell all those people who are trying to do that?
Stop it.
I kind of want
I
to
don't
have
know
like a
who taught
wall
it
of
to him.
shame
Right.
of here. I'll blur out the names because I don't, I don't even know these people, but I'm sure they're lovely people. They just feel like this is the way to go about it. And it's comically bad.
Well, it's horrible. And I think they took a webinar or some sort of workshop that taught them to do it that way because the scripting is so much the same. So, yes, bad, bad, bad. Don't do it. Having said that, uh, you should make sure your profile is fully filled out, that you are connecting with people you know, that you are engaging in conversations with people, that your high school is on your profile as education, regardless of how old you are. Because here's a really weird, interesting thing. Unless you were a total jerk in high school, the people you went to high school with trust you as an adult
Oh,
automatically. It's weird, but it's this shared life experience thing that when you connect with them on LinkedIn, it's this previous knowing. I can't
sure.
explain it. I just know it works and it works really well.
Interesting. I don't think I have my high school on there. I'll have to go
Oh
look
my
at that.
gosh, put it on there. It is remarkable. It is. I mean, I could tell you story after story about opportunities and things that have happened because of me connecting with people I went to high school with, for starters. But then do your research, go to the search bar, put in the target market, put in the title, whatever it is, and you're going to see people come up, and then choose second connections. And you'll see how you're connected to the people you want to be talking to. Then pick up the phone and call them or send them an email through your regular email and ask them for an introduction. Just politely. Would you be open? Would you feel comfortable introducing me to so and so? Would love to have a conversation with them. If they trust you, they'll say sure. And then, great. Could you do it by email? So I have their contact information, because you want to know when they do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can be on it, on top of it. And then ask for a meeting, ask for a conversation.
And I think that's a great point. A lot of people are like, well, I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm not getting business from it because they're using LinkedIn as a substitute for having the conversations as opposed to an enablement tool for the conversations.
Boy, I think that's a great point. And social media does not replace personal conversations, right? And even with distance and even with COVID, we have video, we have the phone, we still have ways of communicating with people one-to-one.
Well, it's funny because as an introverted person, as a sort of prototypical engineer, I hated making sales calls. I had all that head trash about what
Yeah.
that meant too. And so I was great at using technology to avoid having conversations. I thought, oh, this is great. And it turns out not only is it not great for sales, it's actually not great for me. Even as an introvert, I want to talk to people. I just want to talk to people on my terms.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, so now I actually go through my day and I spend a lot of time talking to people and I love it. And
Yeah.
instead of being completely drained and all stressed out
Mhm.
by it, like that
Mhm.
was fun. Who
But
knew?
isn't that great? You do it on your own terms. So you figured out a way that makes sense to you, that feels good for you, that you enjoy. So you're probably having really great conversations with people.
Well, and it kind of ties back into some of what you were saying earlier about the need to be on and the need to sell. And when you feel like, oh my gosh, I have this one referral and I've got to close them,
Yeah.
whether or not they're a good fit, even if they're a great fit, you're in the wrong mindset.
Right.
Versus when you know that there's plenty of fish in the sea and your job is to commune with the right ones
Yeah.
and help the right ones, or help all of the people, but spend more time with the people that you can really help.
Yeah.
And that if that one doesn't work out, that's fine. There's more coming. It just takes so much pressure off.
Right. And then you're genuine. Then you are you
Right.
in the moment and you are present. And that's what people want. If we remember that people want to do business with people they trust, they can't trust you if you're not you.
Yes. And there's so many people who are good, super honest, super ethical people, and they freak out in the sales cycle.
Yeah.
I've been through that.
Yeah.
And then you lose all the trust because they're like, this person's weird. They're sweating, maybe metaphorically, maybe literally.
Right. Right. Something's not right. And right. And you know what they think? You're lying to them.
Something feels off. Something
Right.
is not authentic. I had Bob Berg on the show a few episodes back, and
Love him.
Wonderful, right? And it was funny because I read his book finally, and the thing that took me the most sort of mental marinating to grasp was the law of authenticity. But it's so true because, as you're saying, right, if you're not yourself, you're not trustworthy, and you can't get anything done with anybody really.
At all. You really can't. And think about, I think if people think about it, if they flip it, do you trust people who you can tell are not being authentic, regardless of why?
Right.
Right? You don't even have to know why, but when you get that vibe from somebody that something's off, they're not really, you're not going to open up your wallet.
Right. We've all had those sales experiences where the salesperson, whether it's business or personal, is trying to apply all those techniques and mimic us and whatever, and it's just not them. And then we've all had those sales experiences with the crazy person who's just a total riot, but they're totally into whatever it is they're into.
Yeah.
Who do we buy from? We don't buy from the shady person who's trying to mimic us. We buy from the crazy person who's passionate about what they do, even if they're not the same as we are, because we can tell it's them.
Right. And they're passionate about what they do, right? And that's contagious. And you can tell that they are. And so you know that they honestly believe what they're talking about.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Now, something else that you talked about, which of course is near and dear to my heart, is how do people stay organized with all this? Because it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to have the right mindset for an individual meeting, but how do I keep track of my whole pipeline and all the other millions of things that I have going on?
Yeah, and such a big problem, right? Because we get so busy, and we have a lot, as salespeople, we have a lot of things we have to do. We have to prospect, we have to have the sales conversation, we have to propose, and then we get the business. And so then, we have to do that. And I really believe we have to have systems and processes for all of these things, and we have to put them on our calendar as appointments.
Yes.
Right? Because you put it on your calendar, now it's a thing. Now you will actually do it. So, to-do lists are nice. And those things on the to-do list need to go on your calendar as just 30 minutes. Just figure out the time of day or the white space that's on your calendar and just plug it in. Because I also think that when we break the whole sales process down into really bite-sized pieces, it also makes it much easier to do. Right? As opposed to looking at it and going, oh my gosh, I have all these things I have to do. No, just this one thing.
Right. It's like, I don't know if you're familiar with predictable revenue.
No.
So this is Aaron Ross, who's been on the show a couple of times. It's sort of like the new sales Bible, I would say, for Silicon Valley types, right? So if you raise $100 million and you have a big sales team, this is the kind of methodology that you're going to be using. And his whole thing is to break up the sales funnel and have different people doing prospecting and doing appointment setting and all this stuff. Because it really makes things more efficient. And of course, my thing is I work with people who are doing all of that and in their spare time, because they're spending most of their time doing the work. But to your point, I think it makes a lot of sense to say, hey, Tuesday mornings, I'm going to do some prospecting calls. Friday, I'm going to catch up on my proposals or whatever it is, so that I can be in that mindset and just crank through it. And I always tell people, like, there's a little button in my tool that says, add this to calendar, like make prospecting calls, make my partner calls. If you are not doing that, have you click that button? And 90% of the time, the problem is they haven't clicked the button to add it to their calendar. It's that simple.
Right. That's exactly right. And I have this thing, I believe in like creating silos because we all have things we have to do. And usually they relate to different areas of our business. And so if we create these silos and we go, okay, for this silo, here's all the action steps I have to take. And for this silo, here's all the action steps. Then it's more organized in front of us. And then we can take those action steps and put them on the calendar. and they become so much more manageable and doable. And so no matter how busy we get, we're still going to prospect. We're still
Right.
going to follow up, right? We're still going to do those things that a lot of people have a tendency to let go of and then have to start all over again.
And like you said earlier, that creates a vicious cycle, right? The
Yeah.
longer you let it go, the harder it is to restart, and the more
Uh-huh.
daunting it seems to take that first step. And instead of
Right.
saying, "Hey, let's go climb Mount Everest this morning," if we can say, "Hey, I'm just going to walk down to the mailbox," like that's easy. I can do that. I can make time for that because partly because
Exactly.
it's going to be fun, right? And the other thing is, the problem for me was I knew I was supposed to do all that stuff, but I was also dreading it, and so
Right.
that made it really hard to get started. And now, like, for example, this past month, I have been way behind on my conversations because I've had just a load of other stuff I've had to do, but it hasn't ground to zero. So there's always something happening.
Yeah.
And I know that like this week, it's picking back up and my kids are home from school. There's all kinds of craziness going on around here.
Right.
Like I don't have my time to just me to do what I want. But I don't need everything to be perfect because I'm just taking those little baby steps, like you were saying.
Right. Right. And honestly, I think when change your mindset and you realize you're not looking for the sale, you're just looking for the conversation, it brings the temperature down so much that it makes it easier to do the outreach because you're not as nervous about it, right?
Right.
You don't dread it as much. And then when you start doing it, and all of a sudden things start popping and things start happening, and people are calling you out of the blue that you weren't expecting, and what it's because your intention and your energy is toward this whole idea of having these conversations with people and just seeing what happens and what you learn and where they go. It makes it so much easier.
Right. It's like, do you want to get up and make a whole bunch of sales calls? Hell no. Do you want to get up and talk about that thing that you care deeply about and that you love hearing about and you're endlessly curious about and other
Yeah.
people enjoy talking about it with other people who like it too? Yeah, that sounds great, right? Why don't we do it that way?
No, right?
So what else should people know? Or is that pretty much the sales process?
You know, that's probably in the grand scheme of things. You really need to do it. I just really would ask people to, not try and sell at all, to really consider who they like working with. And let me say that that doesn't mean that every new client you get is going to be ideal.
Mm-hmm.
It does mean that it's probably going to keep you away from those awful clients, right? Because you're going to be able to go, oh, no, it really not fitting. So, which is good for you and your business. You're really good. And just remember, people do business, people buy people first, the product or service second, and the company third. So it's not even about your company. It's not even really about this solution. It's about you.
And
So just be you. That's who people are going to love.
I don't know how you feel about this. I think I can guess, but one thing that bugs me that I have been guilty of in the past is these people who are running a business either by themselves or where they're pretty much the person and everyone loves what they do. But you go to the website and it's like about us, our story, as if there's some conglomerate or something. And you're like, I eventually realized that nobody was buying us. And at that point, we were actually an us, but we were tiny, right? Not a conglomerate. No one was buying us because they thought we were a conglomerate. But if they were looking for someone who wasn't a conglomerate and they came to our website, they were like, well, wait a second, something's off. And same thing, right? If I have a great conversation with somebody and I'm like, oh, they're amazing. And then I go to their website and it's like, I think it's just them, but it's sounds like they're trying to be IBM, right? Like,
Right. Well, they're lying. You know,
yeah,
sorry, let's call it what it is, right?
stop lying.
Stop lying, right? Stop lying to people. Exactly. seriously, I think if you remember that you are going to work with the people and the companies that you're supposed to work with, right? It's getting all the right business, not just all the business that is out there. In order to attract that right business, you've got to say really who you are. You've got to just be honest, be upfront. This is who I am. Some people are going to like it, some people aren't, and that's good. It's better than okay. That is good because the people who that's not what they want, they're not even going to entertain it.
Well, and something that this reminds me of, I had a couple conversations last week with customers, as I sometimes do, who are stressed out because they've got a prospect and they're like, oh, but I think the prospect's budget is X and, I'm not really happy about that. And I'm kind of like, well, you're not obligated to propose a business deal that you're unhappy with. Like, why would you do that?
Right.
Like, it's okay for you to say, here's how I would do this. And for them to say, I can't afford that, or I don't want that, or whatever. But that you don't have to sell a Mercedes for the Kia price.
Right. But this is why asking all these questions is so important. And the budget question is a huge question and is like one of the, creepiest questions on the planet, because it's got all this stuff caught up in it. Seriously, you need to know everything. And then you have to be honest and discerning. I can give you this for that price. If this doesn't work, we all just need to know it. I can refer you to somebody else, right?
Now, how do you recommend that people ask the budget questions?
Yeah. So the question everybody hates is, so what's your budget? Because no one wants to tell them. So I have a couple of things that I like. I think you can ask, have you considered a budget for this?
Mm-hmm.
It's a yes or no question, but at least gives you an idea if they've thought about it and you're not asking them what it is yet. So it's warmer. But I think you can also ask whether they've ever done business with a company like yours before. Because if they say yes, they spent a certain amount of money there, right? So you can say, would you feel comfortable sharing with me, what your investment was, what your monthly spend was, depending on what it is you sell, what was it? If they aren't comfortable, I firmly believe you have to continue asking questions about it. Like you have to say, okay, it's not the first time I've heard someone not want to share that. Could you explain to me why you are hesitant in sharing that information with me? Because at some point, if this makes sense, there's going to be money exchanged for our product or service or whatever it is. So, I think it's important that we aren't miles away from each other, and everyone has a ceiling. Mm-hmm. So would you feel comfortable sharing with me your ceiling or range or whatever? We have to continue that conversation. I submit, seriously, guys, oftentimes what happens is we ask the budget question, they won't answer it. We keep going, but we don't say anything else about the budget. Then we propose, and then they ghost us. They say, wow, that is so far out of my budget. They don't answer the phone. Mm-hmm. We have to think about it. Okay.
Now, how do you respond to the folks who say, well, I'm hesitant to share this with you because I feel like you're going to give me the number that's like 3% below my ceiling?
Yeah, right. Okay. Honest answer, right? So I thank them. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I get it. You've probably had that experience before, and I totally understand. My goal is to make sure that I really understand where you are and what you're thinking, because there's a limit, right? Like I can do certain things for you, or if I have a product, it has a floor, it has a minimum, and I don't want to waste your time. I am sure you don't want me wasting your time having this whole long conversation and going through a whole process. If we don't even know where we are with the money, we could be really far apart, and that just makes no sense.
So if they say, well, what's your minimum? Do you tell them what your minimum is?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Well, I share my pricing. I just say that this is what it is, and we can always work something out. But I don't, if their ceiling is lower than my minimum, then they're going to get something that is equivalent, right? So one of the biggest mistakes people make is they discount their price because they want the business, and then they're unhappy and they feel like they want to discount whatever it is they're offering. You can't, right? If you haven't had this conversation, you can't say, I'm going to give you this for this when it really should be this. Guess what? You come in at this price, you still have to give them this. You can't. So, but knowing the answer, you may be able to say, okay, well, you know what? Right now, this is what you can afford. This is what we can do.
Right.
So we could do it in stages.
Mm-hmm.
If you can do it, great. But that's why you have to have the conversation, because that's where solutions come from, or not.
Right.
And then you can be honest with them and say, you know what? I really appreciate the information and the honesty. And I got to be honest with you, I am not the best resource for you because I can't give you what you need and want at that rate.
Right.
So let me refer you to a couple people who might be able to.
Or go buy my book. Right? Like that's the cheaper option.
I've done that, actually. I have said, read my book first.
Right.
The
Another good
information's
reason
in
to have a
there.
book.
It may be all you need.
Right. Well, Diane, where can people find you if they would like to learn more?
Wow, Ruben, thanks so much. The best thing to do is to go to my website, helbigenterprises.com. There they can sign up for my newsletter. They can download a free chapter of the book. So, they can check it out for themselves. They can schedule a 30-minute complimentary phone consultation with me. We can, try and resolve anything they've got going on in that 30 minutes. That's where everything is. So sort of the hub.
So Helbig Enterprises, and that's HELBIG. We'll have the full link, of course, in the show notes, but HELBIG Enterprises.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Diane, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciated the book, and it was a long wait, but I think it was worth it. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Did something in this episode or a past episode help you out? I'd love to hear about it. Send comments, questions, or ideas for future episodes to hello@salesfornerds.io. And of course, iTunes reviews are super helpful for getting the word out. So if you've got a few moments to put one of those up, I'd really appreciate it. If you got a friend who'd benefit from one of these episodes, send a link. If you got a friend who wouldn't benefit from one of the episodes, but you just haven't talked to in a while, this is a great excuse to pick up the phone and give them a call. Of course, if you're looking for a whole new take on CRM for solo consultants, along with proposal templates, lead magnet ideas, free positioning tools, and more, check it out at mimiran.com. That's MIMIRAN.com. Again, thanks for listening, and until next time.